Hey everybody, we back again with another episode of the Eavesdrop. We here with TheeBlackAngloSaxon
InquisitiveQ.
and we just coming again today to bring you all another conversation. Today we're going to be discussing identity politics through the lens of Stacey Abrams and all of the sexual allegations around Joe Biden, as well as the VP stakes in regards to the national election. But before we get started, like the video, share, comment. And so, did you have anything to add before we get started?
No, well, hey y'all.
All right. So today, CNN reports Stacey Abrams came out basically in regard to Joe Biden's VP nominations, and she had some comments that I'll read from. She put, "I believe that women deserve to be heard, and I believe they need to be listened to, but I also believe that those allegations have to be investigated by credible sources." This is what Abrams told CNN as it relates to Joe Biden and the Tara Reade investigation that's currently taking place as it relates to Joe Biden. This is just interesting in terms of how she's willing to position it, and I want to frame it around identity politics because we get into women and we get into whether it be white people, black people, and we like to do this thing where people, instead of talking about policy, we're having a conversation around Joe Biden or Kamala Harris, or as it relates to the VP picks, them being likely candidates because of they can garner, I guess, the black vote, right? And so the issue that I have with this, one being, you have this person who, I'm not sure if everybody is aware of the Brett Kavanaugh situation that happened prior to this, which is very, very, very similar in terms of how it played out. But you have this person, Stacey Abrams, when that came to fruition, had a completely contrasting statement in terms of how they believe women. Joe Biden had a very contrasted statement as well in terms of we should believe women no matter if it's the corporate CEO or whether it be the janitor. But now we see this situation where everybody, to get the VP spot or basically, coalesce around Joe Biden since he's the nominee, and just completely going in the opposite direction. The problem that it causes, though, is one, it collapses what we talk about as intersectionality, because you have this dynamic where on one hand, people play that moral high ground argument, but now because it benefits them to cover up a rape allegation, they now are just saying, you know what, no, we're going to go with the argument that the GOP gave us when it was Brett Kavanaugh. They're like, no, we need to hear this argued out. We need to see the evidence, and we need to see all of this play out. But when it was that, they didn't want to hear any of it, right? Go ahead.
And to your point, because I was over here thinking like, okay, what you're talking about, and I love it, the way it came to mind, intersectional dodgeball.
Dodgeball.
And the dodgeball itself is accountability.
Whew.
So what it happens is when people have the accountable ball in their hand and they know that if they hit the person,
hot potato,
they can get them.
Hot potato.
Hot potato. But the way I'm thinking about it is that it's not a big pass back and forth. It's like you literally have to, you and your shooters, and we know I call lawyers shooters, have to dodge that indictment. You have to dodge those charges. But you're in the same arena. You're both playing dodgeball. And it's the intersectional dodgeball is, going to your point. And this is where I bring in classism, but not the American sense of classism, but the very British sense of classism, as in, because people have certain titles, their title or their position makes their character flaws more excusable than someone else's. So with the, I call the Democrats, basically the baby GDP, baby GOP, and I call the Republicans the GDP because they really are the GDP. So you got the baby GDP, GOP, throwing the accountability ball at the GOP, who we know always leads American innovation in the discussions on what really happens in policy. So to bring it all home, the Brett Kavanaugh thing, and we can go even further back and to remove the idea that we're talking about black and white is we're talking about how power is able to use its position and its resources to negate the experiences and the arguments of people who, in public opinion, have less power.
Yeah.
We can talk about, what's his name? You know who freak I'm talking about.
Which one?
Supreme Court Justice.
Brett Kavanaugh.
Not Brett Kavanaugh, before him.
Clarence Thomas.
Clarence Thomas. It's like even that related to Biden. So we can see that it's a part of Biden's characteristics to play to his advantage. So it's not, and what I mean by play to his advantage, play to what people are more receptible in accepting, and that's his moderate play. We know he's not a moderate, he's a conservative with blue skin.
Yeah.
Intersectionality dodgeball with the accountability. You got the baby GOP, which is the Democrats, and then you got the GDP, which is the Republicans. The GDP is using policy to uphold, let's be real, pensions, to uphold corporate debt, and so forth. And that's when you get the money press in Spain on Netflix. That's called the money heist, and they articulate that argument. But then you have the baby GOP, who really is the ones that's playing intersectional dodgeball within the DNC. And this is one of the main reasons I'm an independent, is that they want to levy these moral arguments against the GDP or the Republicans. But time shows that moral arguments are very weak because everyone is fallible, everyone is human. So when you bring that level of scrutiny to leadership, you really have to draw the line. And what I'm seeing from people is that they are willing to draw the line at title only and not at character.
Yeah, and I think it just speaks to, like, we also have to have a conversation just around, identity politics, because I don't think a lot of people understand just how it functions on, like, even on a very, like, surface level. So you get into this idea that black women are going to get black voters, and you get this idea that, Joe Biden appeals to the average worker because that's who he is, or you get a Pete Buttigieg who appeals to young, gay, homosexual, LGBT voters because that's what he represents. But in actuality, we have to move out of that, because in the end, and Obama being just another example of that in terms of, being a black man and galvanizing the black vote, which he does very well. But you come down to this thing where it's like, look, ideologically, we aren't diverse. We're diverse in a myriad of colors, but ideologically, we aren't really diverse. And it speaks to the issue with identity politics, because you'll have a person like a Stacey Abrams, who has worked between party lines, throughout the history of her career and is champion for it. Joe Biden being the same, saying he works with segregationists. You have Kamala Harris, and we can go down the line in terms of how their economic policies and how their policies aren't necessarily progressive in the way that people would like to speak to. And I think the blind spot that it causes for a lot of us who may not necessarily be in politics, immersed in it and like keeping up with every single thing, is that you get this candidate and you think this person is representative of you. Because I hear the word, and I hear people use a lot like, oh, this is a representative democracy. But it's like, they represent you in terms of how you look, but in terms of how you think, I've been in rooms where it's like, okay, there's a lot of different shades of brown, there's a lot of different colors, and there's women in the room, but at the same time, all of these people really had the same mindset and scope when it comes to how they're assessing issues, how they're viewing issues, and the whole nine. And so I have just a personal problem with it just because it creates this false sense of security because we do see people who look like us, and it puts us in this false sense of hope that we'll have people who will advocate for us.
I'm gonna jump in if I can.
Go ahead.
The reason I kept shaking my head, and I'm gonna say it to the crowd, we do not live in a democracy. We live in a republic. More importantly, you know me. I'm taking this from Alexis de Tocqueville. In this republic, we look for the soft despot. And what I mean by that, and when I take that from Tocqueville, because I'm going to bring it down. A lot of the electorate look for someone to be responsible for their issues or the things that they can do on their own. So you can't ask for a sophisticated political discourse when you don't have a sophisticated populace.
This is true.
So when I hear things about certain politicians, it's like, okay, the reason we are dealing with identity politics and people are not really understanding that politicians, and now this is me playing devil advocate, but also to my position for real, it's like, yo, you can't keep blaming politicians for having to use what it is that people will gravitate towards them so they can continue to make any kind of policy. I mean, any kind of policy.
I agree.
It's like, if you want actual policy, you want actual representation, you have to, and to your point, you have to go with a representative that doesn't necessarily look like you, but the things and the concerns that you have sound like the concerns that you have. And this is the truth. I'm telling you, bro. We can look it up. TV literally changed how politics was done because I believe it was Nixon running against JFK. Those who listened on the radio thought Nixon won. Those who saw it with JFK thought JFK won. You can't quote me on it, but I'm pretty sure that innovation of people seeing versus having to listen is that people tune out with the visuals. Look at the Obama campaign, bro. That shit looked like an Apple TV. I was like, damn, son, rock your old Apple episode or marketing and look at it. It's the same shit, same tone, same lighting, all of that. It's like, okay, I get it.
Yeah, and it comes down to, I think the other issue is people pick and choose too, because it allows for this very large gray area. So you'll have in this case, women, the Me Too movement, and all of these women who stood for women, and the left. You have all of these people who went real hard and saying, "Oh, I wouldn't support nothing that come from a person who raped people." And now we're hearing them just make a complete flip. You know, we had a Hillary Clinton, we had a Christian Gillibrand. All of these people come out and lambast to the extent that this was a final straw in terms of how we can, move past it. No, this was a final straw in terms of how people are like dealing with people, but at the same time, are now flipping that because of the fact that it benefits them. Give me 1 second though. But people are like flipping now at this point and not necessarily standing firm in that stance. And we see in that gray area where the moral argument breaks down, people's values break down, and the issues in which people champion break down. So it leads me to, ask, how do you support something that you have advocated against? So on one hand, Trump, Kavanaugh, and again, I vehemently agree, rape is wrong, which is why I personally just can't support Joe Biden for a myriad of reasons, this just being another one, because of those values. And so for me, I'm just kind of, a little bit lost in terms of, and not lost, I understand that people are fickle, But I just want to give the opportunity for people to redeem themselves in terms of, going against their own values, which I know most people are just self-oriented and don't really care.
But it's also social conditioning. Blah, 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 blah. Social conditioning. That's when I get frustrated, that's how you know, because everything just, it's a freight train running out my mouth. And what I mean by that is that we have this conversation about bipartisanship, but bipartisanship is supposed to be policy only. It's like, that's because people don't really understand. And like I said, we don't live in a democracy. Mm-hmm. And the people don't take truly the role of a citizen. You can get more people at a candlelight visual than you can at an ANC meeting.
This is true. And just go ahead.
Just my point, because what I was saying, not to cut you off, but what I was saying is that because you have blue, red, and not a lot of people going like, I don't care about what party you're in. I care about the policy and I care about the character that you're going to have in this role. And that's when it becomes to the point of, I don't like Donald Trump as a individual, but I will always respect him as a 45th president of the United States. And you have to respect the office of the institution. You can't allow your avarice or your dislike of an individual that you disrespect the office. And that's what's happening, because what I hear is that let's have a Mitt Romney in the DNC. Let's have a McCain in the DNC that's willing to stand on principle and not on party lines. And AOC, I'm going to say it to the camera. Please leave a comment. AOC is not ready. Nothing that she proposes will ever really make it. She's not ready. She doesn't even have enough support in the electorate.
They ain't going to support her either.
Exactly.
Because they willing to go with a rapist.
Exactly. So AOC is just for headlines. That's it. As I was saying, when you really begin to understand the efforts it takes to actually deliver a policy that works for 50 states, the landmass, the different populations that we have to deal with in America, then you begin to understand, I don't necessarily want an individual who is concerned with following the party, as I want an individual who represents me that's willing to solve the problems that we are facing at this time, creating systems and processes to redress policies so that they remain inclusive as well as sustainable, as well as open and receptive to the changes of the United States populace and how the populace sees itself. Now, that in itself means that we need dissent, and I don't see any dissent in the DNC. I don't see no dissent. Anyone who dissents gets nixed. And it's like, if you're doing that, then you can't get mad at Trump.
Yeah, because Bernie Sanders fell in line. I was just having a conversation earlier in terms of, again, you have a person with these grand values and these grand gestures, but when it comes down to it, he didn't even take the stand or wasn't even willing to, get Joe Biden to try to commit when he handed over his whole base. And us in politics understand that, like, look, your phone book, your contacts is everything. So my thing is, like, look, if you're going to do that, if I'm going to hand over my phone book and my database to you as a candidate who I may not necessarily agree with on the values, I'm at least want to weaponize that in the moment where we're having a conversation. Quentin, you on, hey, what's up with that Medicare for all, bro? And I'm going to try to get you every time on it while we on this camera, because guess what? I'm about to feed my people to you. And so it comes down to this thing where people aren't even battling for the values. People are just kind of going along with it and succumbing to it.
Where can you fight? Everything's on this thing. Where can you fight? They can just edit it out.
This is true.
It's like, okay, I'm going to let you, Devon. I'm going to let you, TheeBlackAngloSaxon. Attack me. Okay, attack me. Meanwhile, my people, my producers, my editing team in post, because everyone wants things so polished, I'm just going to take you out. I don't care. People don't even think for 5 to 10 minutes at a time.
Yeah.
Songs, you got literally Quibi, 10-minute videos. They don't have the attention span for you. So I'm just going to leverage my resources against you. I'm going to use my institutional weight against you, because you don't have an actual policy, a populace that's willing to weaponize itself and take a stance. And that's why I don't have a problem with the Trump base. I don't. They're willing, even though they're getting screwed over, they're willing to stand for their person because they are going for the long term.
Yeah. That's racist. That's racist in America throughout, though. They have been the most consistent group in America. Yeah, because in the end,
Dissy cracks.
They are the ones who are willing to fight for and uphold the values in which they say they believe. And so, like, just moving to that, you know, a lot of people going back to your point about bipartisanship, you know, and that just goes back to your point about like bipartisanship in terms of the GOP gets the Democrats to move on ground every single time. And, you know, people talk about conceding and all of those things, but it's my thing is like, how much do you concede before you understand that the person you're conceding to understands what you're conceding on, which allows me because politics is an exchange of power. So we're not going to be out of power indefinitely because, again, you have people like Joe Biden and Stacey Abrams who are willing to work across those party lines. And just for like an example, you know, in 2015, and this is a report from The Intercept, it says Democrats in State House were led by then caucus leader Abrams, who is now a candidate for governor at the time in which she was in the state's Democratic primary. Lawmakers have testified under the oath that the gerrymandered maps were presented to Abrams and that she consented to the changes, which is why the Democratic caucus was instructed to support the measure. State Rep Brian Strickland, one of the members who requested the new maps, testified that he was told that Abrams was in consent with the changes that were being proposed by Republicans, which is part of the reason it was bipartisan. Abrams, Strickland said, signed off on the new maps. Another member who chaired the House oversaw the process and testified that he was in communication with Abrams about the proposed changes. Nick said he welcomed Democratic input and consent for moving forward with HB 566. He had people on both sides of the aisles who wanted to make changes. And so we hear this talk about, you know, people wanting to work on both sides of the aisles, but I don't think we understand how damaging and sometimes it could be, because to my knowledge, she lost to Brian Kemp in large part because of the voter suppression and because of the actual maps that she signed off on. And she refuted that. It was upheld, as we know. She lost. It hasn't been overturned. But it's like the same can be said when we're talking about Obama. You know, a lot of people would like to say, oh, Trump's unraveling everything Obama's doing. Well, again, you conceded to the GOP when you were crafting these bills. So when that power exchange happens, it just makes it that much easier to come in and undermine the policies that you put in place.
Because Obama created policy for the coast, because that's where he was winning. That's where the DNC continues to make his mistakes. Stacey Abrams needs the DNC to still have a platform. She's not a Michael Bloomberg. She doesn't have an infrastructure outside.
Michael Bloomberg donated to her, not the other way around.
And that's where the GDP and the baby GOP leadership is different. I always say, as a principle, bipartisanship is necessary. And why I say as a principle,
I agree.
And this is why it really goes into the character of the person within the role and not the role itself, is that to take those stances, she has to be willing to suffer all of the effort she put in before she ever came into power. She has to be willing to go back to wherever she came, because you know, I don't know her. I kind of don't care. And I know I don't care because you are a Black woman leader who does not have the resources to go against some of the policies that's being brought forth by the Republican Party. You don't have the resources. You just don't. And that's when you, going back to intersectional dodgeball, classism, caste systems come into place. It's like what we need is economic change, and what we need is a change in direction of where value and where we really respect effort in America.
Yeah.
Beyond the identity, but the thing about Barack is that he's a corporate lawyer, or I should say the Obamas. He's a corporate lawyer, and his base are the coast. His base is young people, and this is where I really do agree with older people about the intergenerational conversation that needs to be had in communities. It's like you don't understand the true cost of these policies because it take years, maybe generations, for them to be removed.
And not to cut you off,
No, cut me off.
But before we go any further, I just want to, because I know a lot of people are going to be like, "Oh my God, they're talking so bad about Obama," right? But it's not even to talk bad about Obama. The question is a lot of people want to say on one hand that Obama didn't have agency. Obama couldn't do things because of the GOP blocked him. And Democrats use that as an excuse, right? When really, we all know Obama came into a pretty good situation, had the House and the Senate, right? So on one hand, all right, cool. If you're willing to take that argument in terms of Obama not having the agency to do that, my question to you then is, are we actually free? Because either you have the agency or you don't. Because then after that, people also want to tell me why it's important to have that level of representation. And so it's like, is it representation if you don't have the agency to represent the people that you came in to represent, but instead you are confined to advocating and allocating resources to the people that you say you don't have interest for? That's my biggest thing. Again, I can take either or, because if people want to say he don't have agency, I can agree to that all day. And then we have to have a bigger conversation about America. But you can't tell me on one hand that, Obama on one hand is this great figure and he's done so much to change America, but at the same time tell me, but when I tell you about the things that he's done wrong, he didn't have agency. He had to do that, bro. Y'all gotta understand. Bro. That's a very, very duplicitous argument.
It's the dodgeball. It's the mendacity. Well, that's what's being exposed now. And I love Tennessee Williams, or basically Paul Newman's interpretation of Tennessee Williams' line, the mendacity, Big Daddy. The mendacity. It is the cat on the hat tin roof that's saying that the sun is too hot. It is the ongoing tensions in America. We have to accept that the North is not an ideal. The Northeast is not an ideal. We have regionalisms in this country. And what I mean by that is that when it comes down to agency, Obama may have agency inside of a city, where in cities you have this white liberal class that is progressive socially, but economically, not at all. Because wealth in America, we know, is tied to the antebellum. It's tied to the failure of Reconstruction. It's tied to the rise of the Redeemers. It's tied to the birth of the nation. It's tied to Jim Crow. The wealth creation opportunities that explicitly excluded people who are not deemed white and therefore acceptable. And those continuing business practices, because as businesses as innovated in America, it looks to the past as a predictor of what can come into the future, but it's heavily biased. So to your point about Obama and Trump, is that they're speaking to two different Americas. I don't care what Obama said in his 2004 speech. There is no white America. There is no black America. Yes, there is. Because right now, you and your family are using your black American card to be producers with Netflix.
Yeah.
And when person who is white, working class, in the middle of America criticizes Obama for that.
You hide behind that black card.
You hide behind the black card, and most importantly, to your point, the base goes, oh, they're being racist. It's like, is a person racist for saying, you using the black card like it's an American Express. You using the black card to get what you want, but you're not willing to pay back that debt, which is you delivering on your promises of making sure that I have health care. Because if anyone really don't have health care, and Obamacare is like, this is not affordable. So some of the things that Trump is being repealing is the execution of these ideas, because that's the problem. Obama is an idea. Barack Obama is an idea. And I love how Frontline covered his presidency. It's like what Trump shows, and I said it before, Trump shows what it means to be a president. Being the president of the United States is not to, you don't have to be liked.
Nope.
People don't have to like your decisions. It all comes down to, did I make the right decision at the time with the information I was given?
Yeah. Because when you look back in history, a lot of people like to do this whole thing where it's like, Trump is the worst. And it's like, son, all presidents have been largely the same, if not worse. Trump is not the worst president in modern history. That is the most fallacious argument. And it comes down to, again, where we talk about intersectionality, I think in large part because white people don't want that narrative. So when you have like...
Which narrative, to clarify for me?
That white people are racist in large part. Because what happens is you have the liberals who are also in some cases racist. They just don't understand that their passivity and their neglect is how they express their racism. It's just a different version of what outward right Trump supporters that they like scoff at do. It's like, look, you saying that you like Bernie Sanders, perfect example. I don't see color. That's racist, Bernie. Again.
But they will quote the voice of you who talked about the color line.
Exactly. Or you would, or you love the champion King, but then you also, so did you not see King's blackness? Did you not see when you were in the pits fighting, as you claim, did you not see the stark contrasts?
Black civil leaders get whitewashed, or I should say, to remove from the racial polemic, bleached when they're dead. It goes back to Baldwin, goes back to Hughes. It's like, that's because people know that they don't. Those who have the access to the information and who actually read material that they don't like. And this is where this is where I give respect to adversarial positions, is that if my adversary is reading material that I need to know, and they're well-versed in material that I need to know, and they use that material against me,
I need to know it.
Bravo, because you actually put the work in.
Yeah.
And that's where it comes down to, because they're not reading those.
And so, with all that being said, in terms of, Stacey Abrams, identity politics, as we both know, the VP states are still, as we started, she made those comments and she's put out her resume. But I personally don't believe that he's going to pick a black woman, especially just not Stacey Abrams, because I feel like even though she does play both sides or, has that bipartisan tactfulness, some of her policies are still too progressive and she's a wild card. And I just think Kamala Harris, Joe Biden being who he is, I don't think he's ever going to forget the fact that she called him a racist on national TV, and just the fact that she polled low with black people specifically, and then Stacey Abrams losing that race. So I think he may play the actual electoral votes and be strategic in that way, and try to go in the Midwest to get some of those swing states versus trying to get, because California is already blue. Again,
Coast.
Stacey Abrams, it's swing, but again, you you lost the race again due to voter suppression, but who's to say what it is? What's your thoughts, man?
On the VP thing, I have one thing. Michelle Obama, 2024. Because no one cares about Stacey Abrams. She's a straw dog argument to distract away from the allegations.
If Michelle Obama divorced Barack Obama, I may vote for her.
She ain't gonna divorce Barack. and to be fair to the Obamas, we have to really understand where they are coming in the American narrative, because they are leading that narrative. But in all seriousness, what I do like about, even in this strong dog argument with Stacey Abrams, is that the sisterhood is showing that it is fragmented. Fragmented. It always been fragmented, and then we have to have a real conversation about character. So when it comes down to the VP, he's not picking Stacey Abrams. I wouldn't pick Stacey Abrams, and I'm not anyone in special in particular. But my main reason that I wouldn't pick Stacey Abrams is that she does not and has not shown to be a leader on positions. She compromises. She negotiates. But what America needs right now is a president who's a leader on positions. And I don't see that in her track record.
Okay. So that wraps up another episode of Gilded Sages. Again, like the video, share, comment, follow the hashtag eavesdrop on us as well to suggest any videos or topics that you would like to see. Check out my work, Death of a Nigger Boy. You can find it at Politics and Prose. And we just appreciate y'all for having another conversation with us. And just leave some comments. Again, drop some comments, man. Drop comments. It's all about conversation. If you disagree, I love it. The disagreements, I might respond to the disagreements even more than the agreements, because I like when people disagree.
Let's have a symposium. Let's be citizens, digital citizens.
But yeah, man, again, we appreciate y'all. Thank you, and we'll catch y'all next time.